There is a song you hated the first time you heard it. You thought it was annoying, repetitive, not for you. But it kept playing on the radio, in the store, everywhere. And then, somewhere along the way, something strange happened. You caught yourself humming it, and then you actually started to like it. The song did not change. You did. And here is the unsettling part. This is not really about music. This same invisible force is shaping who you trust, what you buy, who you find attractive, and even what you believe is true. It is doing it to you right now, and you have no idea it is happening. It is called the mere exposure effect, and it is one of the most quietly powerful forces acting on the human mind. Let's pull it into the light. The core idea is almost absurdly simple, which is part of what makes it so powerful. The mere exposure effect says this: the more often you are exposed to something, the more you tend to like it. That is it. Just seeing, hearing, or encountering something repeatedly, with no other reason, makes you feel more positively toward it. Familiarity itself breeds liking. You do not need a good reason. You do not need new information. You just need repeated exposure, and your feelings warm up all on their own. This was studied carefully by a psychologist named Robert Zajonc, who ran a series of clever experiments in the 1960s. In one classic study, he showed people images they had never seen before, things like unfamiliar symbols, or made-up words, or faces. Some of these items he showed people many times, others only once or twice. Then he asked people how much they liked each one. And the result was clear and consistent. The items people had seen more often were the ones they liked more. The simple act of repeated exposure, with no other change, made people prefer those things. He even found the effect held when the exposures were so brief or subtle that people barely consciously registered them. The preference grew quietly, beneath awareness. So why does the human mind work this way? Why would simply seeing something many times make you like it? The answer reaches deep into our survival history, and it makes a surprising amount of sense. For your ancestors, the world was full of potential dangers, and the unknown was the most dangerous thing of all. A new plant might be poison, a new animal might be a predator, a stranger might be a threat. Novelty meant risk, but something you had encountered many times before and that had not harmed you was, by definition, probably safe. If you had seen it again and again, and you were still alive, it had earned a kind of trust. Familiarity was a signal of safety, so your brain evolved a simple, useful rule. Be wary of the new, and feel comfortable with the familiar. The things you encounter repeatedly without harm get tagged, automatically, as safe, as okay, as ours. And that feeling of safety and comfort registers in your mind as a kind of liking. This is the deep root of the mere exposure effect. Your warmth toward the familiar is, underneath, an ancient sense of safety, the relief of the known in a world where the unknown could kill you. It kept your ancestors alive, and it is still running in you, in a completely different world. Now, here is where it gets both fascinating and a little disturbing, because this ancient survival rule is being exploited, and it is shaping your modern life in ways you almost never notice. Think about advertising. Why do companies spend enormous fortunes showing you the same brand, the same logo, the same product, over and over and over again, often without telling you anything new about it at all? Because they understand the mere exposure effect perfectly. They know that the sheer repetition, seeing the brand again and again, makes you feel more comfortable with it, more trusting of it, more likely to choose it, even if you cannot say why. When you stand in a store and reach for the familiar brand over the unfamiliar one, you may believe you are making a rational choice. Often, you are simply obeying the mere exposure effect. You like it because you have seen it 1,000 times. It shapes far more than shopping. Consider how it affects your view of people. Research has found that simply being around someone more often, seeing their face repeatedly, tends to make you like them more. This is part of why proximity is so powerful in forming friendships and relationships. We tend to become close to the people we are simply around the most, our neighbors, our classmates, our coworkers, not always because they are the best match for us, but partly because repeated exposure quietly warms us to them. The people you see every day have a hidden advantage in your heart just from being seen, and it reaches into something even more important and more troubling. It affects what you come to believe is true. There is a closely related and deeply unsettling phenomenon. When you hear a statement repeated many times, you become more likely to believe it is true, regardless of whether it actually is. Repetition makes things feel true. A claim you have heard over and over starts to feel familiar, and that familiarity gets mistaken for truth. This is one of the most dangerous quirks of the human mind, because it means a falsehood, repeated often enough, can come to feel more believable than a truth you have heard only once. The mere exposure effect in this form is the engine behind propaganda, misinformation, and manipulation. Repeat a lie enough, and the human mind starts to accept it, not because of evidence, but because it has become familiar. Let that sink in, because it matters enormously in a world where you are bombarded with repeated messages from every direction. Your sense of what is normal, what is acceptable, what is true, and what is good is being constantly shaped by sheer repetition, by what you are exposed to most often. The opinions that surround you, the ideas repeated in your feeds, the messages you encounter again and again, are quietly becoming more believable and more comfortable to you, not necessarily because they are right, but simply because they are familiar. You are being shaped by exposure every single day, whether you choose it or not. So what do you do with this knowledge? The first and most important thing is simply awareness. Because awareness is a kind of armor. Once you understand the mere exposure effect, you can start to question your own preferences and beliefs. When you find yourself liking a product, trusting a message, or believing a claim, you can pause and ask a powerful question. Do I actually like this, or trust this, or believe this because of real reasons, real evidence, real quality? Or do I feel this way simply because I have been exposed to it so many times? That single question can break the spell. It lets you separate genuine judgment from the automatic warmth of familiarity. It lets you reclaim a little control over a mind that is constantly being shaped without its consent. But the mere exposure effect is not only a threat. You can also use it deliberately, for good, in your own life, because it works on the things you choose to surround yourself with. If you want to grow to love a healthier habit, a new skill, a piece of great music, a worthwhile idea, you can use repeated exposure to your advantage. The things you spend time around again and again will tend to grow on you. This is part of why an acquired taste really can be acquired. Why something difficult or unfamiliar at first, a kind of food, a style of art, a discipline, can become beloved through patient, repeated exposure. You can, in a real sense, cultivate your own affections by choosing what you let into your life and return to again and again. And here is a beautiful and slightly tender truth hidden in all of this. The mere exposure effect is part of why the ordinary things in your life, the familiar face across the breakfast table, the well-worn route home, the old house, the everyday routines, grow so dear to you over time. Their value to you is not only in what they are, but in how many times you have encountered them, how deeply familiar they have become, how much safety and belonging that familiarity carries, the deep comfort of the familiar, the warmth we feel toward the things and people we have known the longest, is the mere exposure effect at its most human and most precious. Familiarity is not just a trick of the mind, it is also the soil in which real love and belonging slowly grow. So the next time you catch yourself loving a song you once hated, reaching for a brand you have seen 1,000 times, trusting a message simply because it keeps appearing, or feeling deep warmth towards something, purely because it is familiar, remember the mere exposure effect. Remember the ancient rule beneath it, that the familiar means safe, born in a world where the unknown could kill you. Be wary of how it can be used to manipulate you through endless repetition of products and messages and lies, but also cherish the gift of it, the way it lets the ordinary become beloved, the way familiarity deepens into belonging. Your feelings are being shaped every day by what you see most. The question is simply this: are you choosing what you are exposed to, or is something else choosing for you?